be talking about how energy healing sessions do not work on this linear plane, and they're going to look different every single time. And we need to go with the flow of how the experience is unfolding in order to maximize the best experience out of it. I'm also going to be talking about a dimensional deck that I gifted somebody's inner child that I had not seen before, and it was really exciting. And so this is something that came up during one of my clients' Akashic record readings. And so let's get into it. And remember to give a follow if you want to stay up to date on more sessions. We were going in with the intention to hold space for the multitudes of her inner children that were having some trauma that needed to be worked through within her family dynamics when she was younger, so that way it's not being projected into her adult experiences with those persons. Before we got on the session, I was doing some pre-channeling so I could connect with her inner children and help them feel safe and secure and explain what we were going to be doing today, help them feel a little bit more confident. So when we went in there, I put out a request and said, hey, who would like to talk today? She had a 2-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 16, and an 18-year-old that wanted to speak. The 8-year-old was a little bit nervous about that, and I told her, you don't have to talk. You can sit and listen and watch our conversations with one another, and then I'll circle back at the end, and if you would like to share something, you are more than welcome to. Then we were in a school, and you know those kindergarten mats where little kids sit on, the teacher sits with them? The teens were kind of looking at me like, I said, y'all can go sit on the desks instead if you would like. And as I was looking around, I was like, why are we in a school? Let's go somewhere that's a lot more fun. So we went to the ocean. If you have seen The Meg with Jason Statham and the sharks, they have these marine biology homes, observatories underneath the ocean, octonauts. The cartoon, they also have those. So that's where we were, and we were looking out of the glass walls at all of the marine life, and the kids were super excited, and I said, okay, let's go do something else. And I snapped my finger, and we were in the ocean instead with this big giant bubble dome around us so that we could breathe even though we were in the ocean. And these fish were going from outside the bubble and swimming through it to the other side. And one of her inner children said, how is that happening? And I said, it's magic. And I snapped my finger again, and we were in the ocean without the air bubble. And they said, how are we breathing? And I said, it's magic. Then one of her inner children said, well, what about the sharks? And I said, oh, okay. And this big hammerhead swam by, and I was sitting on top of it like this, kind of like a genie would be sitting. And she said, well, how are you doing that? And I said, the sharks are nice here. And this is not like the ocean on Earth, even though sharks, we're not saying they're not nice. But this is a place of imagination and play and magic, and where you can feel safe with what you're experiencing. Even though I was guiding them on this journey, they're the ones that chose to go to the ocean. And after I transcribed this to my client, she said, oh my God, that makes so much sense. I love marine biology and the ocean. What we need to do sometimes with our inner children, if they have fears about being out of their natural environments or traversing through the ethers because of ghosties and goblins and demons and all these different things that we've been programmed with, we need to baby step our way to traveling in those manners, because it's going to help them feel a lot more safe and secure and trust you as the higher self and the guide, the protector. That's why we started off in a school, because that's something that was known to them, that was familiar. Oh, now let's go to the ocean, but let's go in something that's similar to a house. Oh, let's go into the actual ocean, but somewhere that we know that we can breathe. So baby stepping our way there is going to help you with channeling and astral traveling. We want to start somewhere that's fun for them and helps them feel grounded. After that experience, I had this super creepy eyeball pop up in my mind's eye that had like guts hanging down from it, and I was like, ugh. And the kids started laughing hysterically, and I picked it up off of the ground, and it was fake, like you would find in a Halloween store. And I said, what is this? And they're like, haha, we got you, it's spooky season. And I was like, okay. With the funny pranks. And that is also a representator of building trust with inner children, like allowing them to be silly gooses and doing things like that. I asked all of the kids if there was anything that they wanted to share with me about my client's spiritual gifts, and her 12-year-old said, I want to give a fortune reading. I said, oh, interesting. Okay, well, if you're going to give a fortune reading, then you need to look the part. And I snapped my fingers, and she had, if you've seen like Cleo back in the day, or like That's So Raven, when she's doing fortune telling, she has like the garb on and all this jewelry, and she's sitting at a table, and there's all these lights and crystal ball. That's what her 12-year-old looked like. She said that she wanted to do a past, present, and future reading for my client, the adult version of her. I said, oh, that sounds great. Can I give you a special deck instead? And she said, I would love that. I pulled out one from my ether cabinet, and it's called a dimensional deck, which I've never utilized before. Her higher self gave it to me to give to her. When you look at the cards, you know, when you are outside and you can see the stars and there's no other lights, so they're very pristinely crisp, and it's almost kind of like this purple hue. That's what these cards were, but they were actually holding the sky, like the night sky, so it was moving in real time. They were really cool, and the cards were portals into different timeline experiences, also into my client's subconscious, which I thought was really awesome. So she placed 3 cards out on this table, and when she flipped the first one for past, I saw a giraffe, and it had a monocle and a mustache and a top hat. And I said, is this giraffe a detective? And she said yes. And I asked my client, what does that mean to you? And she said, oh, with the giraffe, that's being observant and you being able to see what's going on in certain situations. Sometimes it's a representative of you being further ahead than others with your esoteric knowledge and wisdom or understanding of your own behavioral patterns and triggers. So in totality, it was in reference to her family dynamics that she was experiencing. And the detective was curiosity of figuring out the roots of those trauma wounds. Then we pulled the second card, and when we went in there, I saw my client's hands, and all the way up her arms there were symbols and ruins and light codes that were all up and down her arms, and all of a sudden they disappeared. But what they were doing was they were integrating into her field permanently. And I asked her what that meant to her, and she said, oh, it's all the work that I've been doing. We've been working with each other for a couple weeks now, but she's been doing so much on her own and having so many consciousness expansions and just trauma healing and wonderful things happening in her life. She's like, that's the payoff of me doing this. And I said, yeah, you got it. So then we pulled the third card. This is where the experience went in a different direction. Me and the 12-year-old astral projected into this card. There's this thing in channeling that is known as tunneling. It's when you are going through a lot of different frames of reality and dimensional planes. Sometimes it can get a little overwhelming and overstimulating because there's so much information coming at you. So you have to really focus on what you are seeking so that you can pinpoint the energetic coordinates in the ethers and snap yourself there faster. And so she was getting a little frantic, and I said, hey, it's okay, take a breath. What are we trying to find? What is the feeling? What is the emotion? What is the thought? Then we saw glimpses of this house start popping up, and I said, okay, we've got a house. Let's go towards that. And after a couple minutes, we projected into this house, and me and her were sitting at a dining room table. And I said, do you know where we are? Do you know whose house this is? And she said, no. And I said, okay, well, we're safe. Let's take a second and see if anybody's here. And she energetically read and could tell that there was somebody in the house. And I said, okay. And this woman walked through the dining room, and she said, oh my gosh, it's been so long since I've seen you. Where have you been? And then my 12-year-old responded, but was responding from the adult version of her. She said, I've been traveling all over the world to my favorite places and spaces. I asked my client what that meant to her. So her grandmother had passed on to the other side, and the woman was representative of her because she hadn't seen her in quite a while, and this was a moment for her to catch up on all of these really wonderful, beautiful things that she has done in the future, because this is a future example of what's going to happen in my client's life, like a premonition of we're going to be traveling everywhere. The house was representative of feeling safety and security within, because that's something that she has been working on. And we did a little bit more chatting about that experience, and Astral projected back to where we first began with the rest of the inner children. And I said, I want to bag your cards up for you. And you know those bags that you put crystals in, they're kind of see-through, sometimes like sparkly. And I said, oh, you know what, maybe we don't put it in there because the edges of the cards might get messed up. And I was like, oh, that's part of my like perfectionism. But I wanted her to have something a little bit more sturdy. So I said, what kind of box would you like? She said, oh, can we make it look like a dragon made it? Kind of like leathery scales with gems on it. And I said, oh yeah, that'd be super fun. But you know, it would be even more awesome if we went to the dragon dimension and they crafted one for you specifically, like personalize it. And she said, oh, we can do that. And I said, yeah, absolutely. I said, after our session, me and her adults, I will take you with me and my higher self to go to the dragon dimension. And all the other kids were like, oh my gosh, can we go too? And I was like, yeah, everybody can go. And so after the session, my higher self took them on the journey. And so when I was talking to my client and I was explaining all of this to her, she said, one, it makes sense, all these different layers that we have here, and that we need to let sessions flow how they are meant to flow with clients, because she's an energy healer and she's learning how to host sessions for others, and a great way to do that is to do it with your own inner children. If I had tried to make things happen in a very specific way, it would not have unfolded the way that the inner children needed it most. I am here to guide it and kind of prompt it and nudge forward a little bit when we are feeling stuck or unable to see with clarity, or maybe I'll come in with some questions. When you are channeling for other people in a very expansatory way, oftentimes there's random images that or experiences that don't seem like they correlate or make sense, but sometimes that's not meant for you to decipher. Like, you're not in your client's brain or in their soul map or their blueprints. You don't always understand why they're seeing things the way that they are. Like, for me, I didn't really question necessarily why we were in the school, or why we were doing the ocean thing, or why she needed a dragon box, or why I was giving her these dimensional cards. Those are not things that I was pushing from my own consciousness and curating. I was along for the ride. And I'm the healer that's observing and giving little nudges when I need to. And at the same time, it's prompts from that person's higher self of like, ask them this, or take them here, or share this with them, right? It's a co-collaborative experience. And that's why I was saying, and no two sessions are ever going to look the same, and you really got to trust yourself as a practitioner, but also trust that other person's facets too. Like, there are different incarnations or inner children or higher self or spirit team. They're going to want them to see things in a very specific way because it's meant for them. So I would love to hear in the comments if you have any questions, if this unlocked and activated something for you as well. And I hope you have a super magical day.